Hello class, and welcome to Notes 5.9, Solving Two-Step Inequalities. Our standards for today are AF 4.1 and AF 1.1. Our objective is to solve two-step linear inequalities and verify the reasonableness of the results, and use variables and appropriate operations to write an inequality that represents a verbal description. So let's take a look at our first teacher example. Solve the inequality, then graph the solution. Now remember, inequalities are exactly the same as equations, which we spent a lot of time on. The only difference is if you're multiplying or dividing by a negative, you do have to flip this sign. So let's go ahead. We're going to draw our fence that you would draw right here. And we want to take a look at first any addition or subtraction that we see, which of course we see subtraction. We want to undo that subtraction with addition. So we're going to add 4 to both sides. We are left with 6x is less than negative 18. Of course, we're adding a positive and negative here, so that's why we end up with secretly subtracting. Now we divide both sides by 6, and we end up with x is less than negative 3. Now notice we divided both sides by a positive, so even though there was a negative in the problem, the sign did not flip. So x is less than negative 3, which means we're going to put an open circle at negative 3, and an arrow going to the left for less than. Remember, left is less than. Also remember we've got the arrow pointing in this direction and the arrow pointing in that direction again. So I'd like you to go ahead and try this on your own. Be careful. Notice this minus sign goes with the 5, so it's negative 5. So be very careful on this one. This is a very challenging problem. Press play when you're ready to begin. Okay, let's take a look. We've got 22 minus 5k, which would be the same thing as writing negative 5k plus 22 if we were to skip change. So now, undoing that addition, we're going to subtract 22 from both sides, and we're left with negative 5k is less than 30. Now I want to divide both sides by negative 5. As we know, that means my less than sign needs to change into a greater than sign. K is greater than negative 6. And open circle again, arrow this time going to the right. Teacher example 2, again we're solving that inequality, graphing the solution. Notice here, however, we have two variables. So our first job is to get the variables together. The 3x is positive, so I can either subtract 3x from both sides, or with this negative or minus x, I can add x to both sides. I tend to like to work with positives better, so I'm going to add x's. Remember, put a 1 in here if it helps you. 3x plus 1 more x is 4x. Okay, we've canceled everything out here, so we're left with 0. Now that we've combined our x's, we're going to do the same thing we always do. We just try to get x by itself. So, add 14, and then of course divide both sides by 4. Notice 14 is not divisible by 4, so you'll be left with either a decimal or a fraction. Either answer would be just fine. And if we take a look at our answer, x is less than 3 and 5/10 or 3 and 1/2. Either way, you get the same answer. So try this one out on your own. Remember, first you want to get your variables together. A hint, take the smaller variable and subtract it from the larger one, and you'll end up with a positive, always. Okay, let's see how you did. Hopefully you added 9 to both sides because we wanted to undo that negative or that subtraction. You'll end up with 2x plus 10 is greater than negative 16. Now we want to work to get x by itself, so we want to undo this addition. Then, of course, we want to undo our multiplication. And we end up with x is greater than negative 13. Notice our sign didn't switch because although we have a negative in the problem, we were not dividing both sides by a negative. And of course, you do need to graph it. Open circle, arrow to the right. Okay. We've got a challenge problem here. Let's go ahead and see how we can do with this word problem, because it's a little bit trickier because the equation isn't set up, inequality, is not set up for us. You are organizing a bowling night in Bishop. Each ticket costs $10 and includes shoe rental. Door prizes cost you $50. Which inequality describes the possible number of people, X, who need to attend for you to make a profit of at least $200. Now notice it says at least. It's not an equal sign. That tells us we're going to be using an inequality because $200 would be great, but it definitely wouldn't be a problem if we earned even more than that. So we want to figure out how we're going to set this up. Every person is going to pay $10. So we've got X times that $10. And then we notice that the door prizes cost us $50. So we still need to make back that $50 first before we have our profit. Remember, profit equals income minus expenses. So the income would be 10x minus our expenses of 50. And then, of course, we want this number to be greater than or equal to 200. So it could be more than 200. You could make more than $200 or equal to $200, but you can't make less. Now we can use our inverse operations, adding 50 to both sides, dividing each side by 10, and we come up with x is greater than or equal to $25, which means the number of people who need to attend have to be at least 25 people or more. Okay, so of course that correct answer is D. Okay, so it's a little challenging, but hopefully you did all right with that. Go ahead and take a look at our quiz here. Please solve the inequality. You do not need to graph it. So, on our first one, watch out for that negative. Problem number 2, make sure you combine those variables first. And problem number 3, again, we're working with negatives, so watch out. Okay, have a great day.